Okay, my friends, prepare yourself for this. This is the Giant's Causeway in Northern Ireland. I have heard more stories about giants, dragons, all of the ancient mythology, and I have found that there is support for this. And we're going to discuss this, and this is a fabulous video. I just did little bits and pieces of it, so we're going to learn a little bit about it together. And again, this is a fair use act. I'm not trying to steal anything. I just want to show what his interpretation of the ancient myth is. And were they myths? Were they real? Were they distorted? And I say they were distorted. Everything that I have found, they're trying to make sense in these ancient days of these spectacular formations on Earth, and they could not explain them. So, like Devil's Tower, they called it the bear tried to scratch and it left all these marks on this tree. And, you know, there's a lot of people saying, oh, these things are trees, like these kind of formations. Let's get into this. But I want you to hear what the ancient story was, how Finn McCool was a giant, but he was like a puppy giant, I mean a little tiny guy, and he built this causeway to confront another giant, and then it really turns into a very interesting story, but it's not reality. So we've gone through a whole layer of stories until we've really discovered that this is biology. The size of these creatures it's staggering. Nobody in their right mind would have ever their mind just can't get into that realm. And I understand that. It took me a while. After finding my stuff and saying, no, this can't be true. I better get this DNA tested. I better get this CAT scan. I do all these things. And yes, it was all true. So now I am going to present to you what I consider to be the truth of these ancient stories. And this is going to be interesting. It will be for me. Okay, before we start, I am under the Fair Use Act, which means that I can comment without permission using copyrighted work, strictly for purposes of criticism, commenting, news reporting. In my case, it's teaching, scholarship, and research. So I'm totally in the clear of doing this, and I'm not doing it to be nasty or anything. I just want to be sure that everybody understands my research in response to these people's comments and statements. Okay, my friends, the only reason I made a statement about the Fair Use Act is because I am being blocked literally everywhere. And the reason is, this is the kind of stuff that they're talking about. The Giant's Causeway is 40,000 interlocking basalt columns. That's these things here. And it's the result of an ancient volcanic fissure eruption. And that's just not the case. Now, this is in Northern Ireland. And the reason I'm being blocked is because I am showing evidence that is supported by DNA and CAT scans and specimens, and I can show you all the anatomical details that it's undeniable. And that's why I am being blocked everywhere. And I just want you to know this is just strictly research. Okay, my friends, I got this morning, and I'm really excited to go through this. And this was done by someone over in Ireland. Now, I got this from a friend. His name is Daniel Finnegan. And he said, take a look at this and see what you think. And boy, I'll tell you, this is just fabulous. Wait till you see. And this gives well, let's just get into it and you'll see. Okay, this is the video. And this is by the Jolly Raver. And it's Giant's Causeway, Myth, Legend, and Folklore. So he's going, you know, everybody wants to present this. Oh, these are basalt columns, and here's what happened 50 million years ago, blah, 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 blah. Well, no. This is biology. That's what my statement is, and I will show you I can support this very, very well. So I'm going to go through his video here. I don't know how much of it will play, but I'll at least do little bits and pieces here and there, and you can come up and watch the whole thing. It's the Jolly Raver. The Giant's Causeway, Myth, Legend, and Folklore. And he's talking about the video explains the popular stories of Finn McCool alongside the lesser-known versions, and then shows the features of the landscape that link the stories. Now, this is the kind of stuff I love because, you know, the details that have been told, I want to know. I don't have time to find all these details. But that's why people send these things to me. I investigate them and I make my statements. And this is what I'm going to do right now. And we'll do it together. All right, here it comes. Okay, my friends, get ready. This is the kind of video I absolutely love. Now, again, this is the Jolly Reaver Giant's Causeway myth, legend, and folklore. Now, let's get started. Here it goes.
The Giant's Causeway on the Antrim coast is an impressive and wondrous location. As its name suggests, this place is rich in ancient stories, passed down generation to generation. This is your guide to those myths and legends, so prepare to be transported back into a more heroic and magical age. For today, we walk in the footsteps of giants.
Now, my statement is all of this is biology.
There was once a time when the tour guides of the Giant's Causeway were local celebrities. Men such as James Hutchinson, John McLaughlin, and the King of the Causeway, Alec Martin, made their living taking curious visitors down to this ancient place and enchanting them with stories of giants. Guides today, alongside videos and documentaries about the Causeway, will mention the giants as the explanation our forebears had for natural processes they didn't quite understand at the time. Now,
you know, I do want to make a statement about that. When he said nobody could understand it, so they had to rely on their best guesses, basically. But traditionally, it was understood long, long, long ago. And we just forgot about it. You know, we get amnesia after a while because you think that's just impossible. And that's we still have this today. I'm showing the evidence that supports what my statements are, and it's not accepted because it's just too much for most people to accept. Anyway, let's continue on here. Hold on. Okay, let's just get started. I say that this tendon is this, and this is stone, and these are the hex columns that they show coming up. Now, there are some really well-formed ones, and then there's these little ones that are crunchy, and that's what you're going to see. They understand the texture of these fibrils, and is this fibril one of these way at the very, very tip, or is it here, or is it here, or is it? There's so many fibers coming down. You can see there's hundreds and hundreds of them. Now, sometimes they come down and they break off, and they usually break flat off because of this. They have this structure to them. Remember that. This is what they look like if you could really get up close to them, and you can. These are little segments, and they just snap right off that way, and they break off in these little blocks. And up at the top, that is literally glue. I'm telling you, it's glue. And what that glue does is it glues that tendon to muscle primarily. All right? Or it could also glue the tendon to a bone or whatnot. But it's the anchor one way or the other. It's the anchor to anchor it into the bone, or it's the anchor to anchor it into the muscle. It does both. And I can show that from ones I have here in my shop. All right, you see this? This is tendon. This is in my shop. I have this right here. Now, this is that gluey stuff. You see that really gluey? It glues the tendon. And then there's another batch of it right here. You can hardly see it. And that glues this side of the tendon into the muscle. Muscle erodes away easily. And there's a bone back here that has eroded away. Hold on, I think that's in this shot. Yeah, here it is. This is the same as this. But this one includes the bone, which would be back here. Now you see that little ball right there? That holds this bone to this tendon. That's the lock. All of these are little tiny fibers. And every one of them, if they broke off, they would have that hexagonal shape. That's what a well, this may not have exactly the same shape as the other ones. There's rope-style tendons, which are just really round-looking tendons, which is what I showed you before. This is a little bit of a there's different styles of tendon. There's a flat-style tendon, there's a rope-style tendon, there's a bunch of different, and a wrinkly-looking tendon. It depends where it is in the body. It's very, very specific to the anatomy of the body where that tendon is. But it is here. I have here's a tendon right here. All right, this is what tendon looks like. You see this is a rope-style tendon. Comes up, and inside that rope is a bazillion of these little fibers. You see this? And they break straight off like that, but these turn into those hex columns, and that's what they are, collagen fibrils. And these are what created, I believe, Devil's Tower and Giant's Causeway. And basically all the columns that you see all around the world, and they're everywhere. There was literally giants everywhere, and they were not just little giants, they were big. Because these are the tendons. So think of the size of the creature. See how many tendons there are? That's in this bundle. And each one of them is one of these. All right, and that bundle comes out from these bundles. Right here. There's the big tendon and rope coming down. And then each one of these breaks down to one of these. And it has its own fascia around it. And then out of each one of these little spots in here comes one of these, which has a zillion little hex. And I believe that's what we got. Where they're perfect hex, I believe where that's going to be, one of these. And they just break off flat. And then it breaks down to smaller and smaller and smaller. And as they get into less and less, this one here is these ones here seem to be the ones that break off nicely. And you see these exact hex patterns. This, I think, is more towards this end. All right, now don't forget, this is real, and this is electron microscopy. Electron microscope. That's your tiny little stuff. This is as small as it gets. All right, there's a lot of explaining to do here about the formation at Devil's Tower, Giant's Causeway, everywhere around the world. Now, remember I showed you the fibrils and they have the little blocks? Well, where's the blocks here? What happened there? What's going on with that? I can explain this, I believe. And it's got to do with water levels and evaporation and preservation under certain circumstances. And we'll go into all of that. But let's just start off with boy, I tell you, I can't get off this Devil's Tower thing. Let's get into the Giant's Causeway and see what they had to say about these ancient stories. And it's very interesting. Here goes. Okay, this is very cool. He's going to be talking about the ancient stories versus the modern age of enlightenment.
Processes they didn't quite understand at the time. Now, they're a bit of fun before they tell you about the geological processes that supposedly formed this landscape. But what if the storytellers of old were right all along? When the president of the Geological Society of Glasgow visited the Causeway and took a tour in 1876, he expressed his frustration at the guides and their silly yarns. It would be an improvement if guides could be brought to describe natural appearance correctly and to omit the senseless jargon about giants.
See, now they can just omit you. I can show the evidence, and they're still doing the same thing today.
But in the spirit of the old guides, I'm going to omit the geological explanations of the Causeway.
Right on, brother.
So, if you want to hear about ancient volcanic eruptions and the like, I'm afraid this is not the video for you. I'll be telling you the main story associated with the Causeway's creation, as well as the lesser known version. And afterwards, I'll be showing you the spots where the giants left their marks, and where you can find them.
All right, let's get started. All right, so here's their explanation of the ancient stories. And they're going to admit the fact that the nonsense about the geology, because it is nonsense. They need to look at these ancient stories, but even with bigger eyes, because they're going to show you that the size of the creatures they're talking about were like bacteria compared to the actual size of the creatures. And what they're going to say is Finn McCool constructed this causeway, and he's a little tiny guy. Hey, there's no way he could construct it. But anyway, listen to this. See, they had no explanation.
Our story starts with the giant Finn McCool. Finn was leader of the Fina, a band of heroic warriors that embarked on many adventures across Ireland. While there are a lot of stories of Finn, it's the story of the Causeway that he's best known for. It was said that Finn lived here on the northern coast with his family. He looked after his lands and people, but was under threat from an ill-tempered rival. For across the sea, in the land that would become known as Scotland, lived another giant named Benandonna. Finn and Benandonna would often exchange insults and threats, and would even on occasion attempt to injure the other by throwing large boulders or pieces of land across the sea. Eventually Finn had enough and decided that it was time to fight Benandonna properly. Swimming wasn't an option, as giants hate getting their feet wet. So he began to construct a bridge, a causeway, to reach his enemy across the sea. Using strange hexagonal pieces of rock, he pushed them down into the seabed to build his bridge. When it was complete, Finn crossed into Scotland, and there he got a much closer look at Benandonna. It was then that he realised that he'd made a terrible mistake. Benandonna was enormous, much bigger and stronger than he. Finn ran back home across the causeway. He ran so fast and in such a panic that he lost one of his boots.
All right, they're going to show the boot later. Now, think of what size of the creature would have to be to do this, and where would he get to construct the materials, first of all? So anyway, they had no explanation for this, because it's biological. So these were the stories, and that's the main story, and you should come up here and watch it yourself. I don't want to steal this guy's thunder. And again, it's the Jolly Reaver. And he's talking about how Finn McCool was scared to death of this gigantic monster who was going to come over to kill him. And his wife took over and dressed him like a baby and all kinds of things. It's very cool. All right, here's what he's talking about now. They're down on the edge where it's eroded away, and these are the anchor balls, basically. Now listen to what he has to say.
Moving on from Port Ganny, we come into what's known as the Little Causeway. The Giant's Causeway is divided up into three parts: the Little, the Middle, and the Grand. Now here in the Little Causeway, you'll see the Giant's Marbles, a game that Finn was clearly fond of playing. These huge rocks cover the Little Causeway, and surrounding them are shallow rock pools. It was at this part of the causeway that a small freshwater pool, bordered by hexagonal stones, had quite a popular reputation with visitors once upon a time. The Giant's Well, as it was known, where
this was right in the midst of where the transition zone is between this really gnarly stuff and the tendons themselves. And you can see it in some of these shots. Hold on. Like this right here. Sometimes they're in really very, very perfect balls, and sometimes they're like this. It depends on where it is in the body. That's what I'm talking about. This is the same sort of stuff here. This would be the tendon, and it is a tendon. And this is how it anchors in. What abrupt transition, just like it's like that really gnarly looking gluey stuff. And where am I here now? then you have, here it is again. Now these holes here, they're not just holes there by accident. That's where a vein was, I'm sure, or an artery, and that's where the artery was. Normally they're fairly close to each other. I would say that's the artery actually, because it's bigger than the vein. Veins are normally a little smaller than the arteries. Because the arteries really have a lot of blood pumping through them, and the veins don't have quite so much blood because they're not carrying all of the lymph fluids back with them. Anyway, this is what happens. It's that gluey stuff, just like I showed you in the little rocks. No difference. You see them? Something has it eroded down, and these balls are just laying around there. And these are really scruffy looking ones. So they were probably up kind of high and dried out pretty quick. Because normally, if they don't dry out real quick, they get very well preserved as a perfectly round sphere. These are what I normally consider to be something that dried out fairly quickly.
He would charge you for a glass of water and a wish, and some would even give you a chaser of whiskey. This tradition died out in the 1950s when the water became contaminated, likely due to chemical.
You see it? These are pretty much the gluey ball parts that have fallen down as it eroded from way up high, and they were dried out early. Now, he's talking about there's supposed to be magical properties in these waters, and all the waters around the world, you see the different colored lakes and all that stuff, they're not different colored for no reason. They're because there's different chemistry in that lake and in these pools of water and in these rivers and so forth. They're coming through arteries and veins and digestive systems and urinary tracts and everywhere else. I mean, that's just the nature of biology, and that's where the waters are flowing. Now, the oceans are different. They appear to be eroding the biology of whatever these land masses were, and they appear to me to be all biological. So that's all I can find anymore. And if people start looking at the edges of the oceans, they see these things. It's just that they're all biology.
Gulls and such washing in off the fields. The well was mostly filled in when the road was constructed in the 1970s, but it's nice to remember this old custom. We'll now move into the middle causeway, the most photographed and most iconic section. Here, visitors walk across the honeycomb stones, just as Finn did eons ago. You'll find.
All right, you see how these are really very well formed hex shapes. And as I showed you before, there's a series of transitions of bigger and smaller fibers. And at one point, they're just exactly hex shape. And I think that's where we are
Find the wishing
here.
chair in this part of the causeway, a natural throne in the stacks of columns. Sadly, wishes can no longer be granted from the well, but all is not lost. There are 3 rules here for sitting on the wishing chair, and all must be met if you hope for the wish to be granted. First, the wish must be kept a secret. Second, you mustn't wish for too much. If you ask to win the lottery, for example, then there's no chance of it coming true. And third, you must wiggle your bottom on the stone 3 times as you make the wish. There was once a time in the past when it was said only a woman would be able to sit on the seat and make a wish. We're now.
You know, that's the thing. There's so many different stories, and I know, I'm telling you, none of that stuff is true. It was a way of thinking about what they saw here and then embellishing it to make it sort of, you know, spectacular so that people would talk about it and so forth. I don't know. They were just trying to figure out what was going on. And then everybody's going to come up with something a little off the wall. Now, the stuff I came up with was off the wall, but it's supported. So it's nothing that anybody accepted. But I think it's starting to be accepted because it's true. If something's true, sooner or later it's going to be, you know, and this is all rock solid. So there's nothing here that it can't be proven. And I have proven it in a number of ways. So anyway, sooner or later.
Now in the Grand Causeway section. Here, you'll see the largest columns and see the remainder of Finn's mighty walkway. You can walk out as far as you can go in the place where Finn made his passage to Scotland. Here you'll see a set of sunken stones which sometimes fill with water after stormy weather, known as the Giant's Fan, which Finn once gave to his wife Una.
All right, where there's the sunken stones they talk about, normally that's going to be where there was some bodily fluids ran through there, because you have to have it. It's got to run in there to support even the tendons. Tendons don't need much, but they need some.
Una. Above this section, you'll see Aird's snout, where it said Finn had the giant's cannons at the ready. These horizontal columns are less obvious now due to rockfalls and vegetation, but the name sticks. But as we move on, we're going to see something more impressive. We're going to pass through what's known as the Giant's Gate. This gap between the causeway itself and the slopes of the headland. Some say it was cut by Finn to keep him from stubbing his toe. Turning the corner, you'll see the Giant's Loom, a long array of towering columns. This was used by Finn for weaving his garters, as the old guides always used to say.
What you got to think about is these are the outside layers of the rope tendons. Now, when they said that, this one here, I would say that's a tendon here, and then there was another one here. Now, I don't know what's going on between the two of them. You know, this could be the abrupt transition right here. It's hard to say, but there are abrupt transitions, and they're left flat as a pancake, which I have shown you. And then if you had your ropes coming down one next to each other, these things are just staggeringly large. So,
and the slopes of the headland. Some say it was cut by Finn to keep him from stubbing his toe. Turning the corner, you'll see the Giant's Loom, a long array of towering columns. This was used by Finn for weaving his garters, as the old guides always.
You see how that is one rope tendon. I mean, this is just staggeringly large. That's where there was some blood was in this area. And over here, wherever you see the red leaking out, rusty looking stuff, there was some form of bloody stuff there.
Always used to say.
Look at that, how big that would have been, my God.
On this side of the Giant's Gate, we find ourselves in Port Noffa, meaning the Giant's Bay. This is the section of the coast where Finn had his family home. While this may be scoffed at by some, the McCool family left a great deal of evidence of their domestic.
All right, if that's the gate they're talking about, I'm going with that. That's a tendon fibril, and that's a tendon fibril, and you're walking through between the two of them.
Life for us to see today. You recall the part of the story where Finn crosses the causeway only to flee back to Ireland, back home, upon seeing the size of Benadonna. He lost his boot in the panic, and
all right, think about this. I mean, I don't want to be critical or anything, but this is the little boot that they're talking about, is Finn McCool's boot, and he had run across the ocean, and he lost his boot. Now, think about what the size of the creature would have to be to build a causeway to get to the other side of the ocean. I mean, it's quite obvious that that's not going to work. All right, but this is the stories now. And again, everybody's going to come up with something.
Evidence of their domestic life for us to see today. You recall the part of the story where Finn crosses the causeway only to flee back to Ireland, back home, upon seeing the size of Benadonna. He lost his boot in the panic, and this boot can be seen here on the coast. A size 93.5. The size of the shoe would make Finn over 54 feet tall.
I got to tell you something right now. I got one in my backyard that the fingertip itself is 3 feet long. And I figured that out to work out to be about 160 to 180 feet tall. And that's been DNA tested in the whole 9 yards. So 54 feet tall. He's not going to build a causeway across the ocean. I don't care what you say about that.
The Victorians called the boot the Giant's Chair because it does make a very comfortable place to sit back and relax.
That might be one of the little things inside your eardrum or something, but not, that's no boot.
From this area, you can get a look at the giant's chimney stacks, marking the location where his hearth must have been. Sadly, in the last 100 years, a section of the chimneys has fallen down, but you can see the chimney stacks from most points of the Causeway route that we've walked. From here next to the giant's boot, we can see another impressive stacking of rock that overlooks the bay. This is the giant's organ. The Reverend Canon Hugh Ford visited the Causeway in 1928 and said the giant who made that organ for his diversion had a great idea of music. Finn used to play music here, and some say that if you come here to this spot alone on Christmas morning, you can hear the sound of his organ music being carried in on the wind.
You see the tendons, and there's the gluey stuff. Now above that, as far as I'm concerned, there had to be muscle. So just, I mean, this thing would have been many, 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 many miles tall.
Perhaps this is where Ossian, Finn's son, who would become Ireland's greatest bard, would come to get his love of music from. On the subject of Ossian, the last...
Alright, you see that? That's the fleshy layer. Now this one here has the muscle down below. It looks to me. Whenever you see that red looking stuff, that's from some kind of muscle-ish area, fleshy.
Point of interest on our mythological tour is known as the teddy bear, the lower part of the headland beneath the chimney stacks. It's very hard to spot, but becomes obvious once you see its distinctive ears. This bear was given to Ossian by Finn when he was very young. The Giant's Causeway is a deeply mystical and impressive spot. Here your imagination is captured by the incredible scenery and the ruins of Finn's grey path across the sea. Perhaps once upon a time there was a great road system connecting these lands, now separated. If you visit the Isle of Staffa, you'll see the same stones that Finn put together here.
Alright, let me just show you something here. Remember I talked about the different styles of, or the different transitions. You see how this is just sort of blocky looking and it's not real hexagonal like the other style. It's still tendon. And again, inside of those sheathings, there's different types of tendon. Alright, this is the one here that is, when you see the exact hex, this is the layer you're at, which is the secondary fiber bundle. And that's what it's going to look like, is these. But inside that, really, if you could break it down, you're going to see these. And they're going to be something like this or this, because they're not exactly perfectly hex. It just steps down like that. And I mean, there's a lot to go through to examine this, to understand it. And these are all the different fibrils that are running out of the bones. Something's down below at the bottom, because those fibers are running up to where some muscle would attach, just like this. The fibers run out of some bone, like down here, which we can't see in Devil's Tower. I mean, in Giant's Causeway. All we're seeing is the fibrils coming up through the top. And then they attach to some muscle. The muscles are eroded away. Simple as that. You know, I keep talking about Devil's Tower, but here it is right here. And these are the same things. These are tendon fibrils. This is from an Achilles heel. This is a heel, and all this is Achilles tendon. And when they break off at the top and snap across those fibers, it's just flat as a pancake. And this is the wrinkle zone. And the wrinkle zone is where the tendon, which is under tension, snaps back where it's cut. And you see that in in surgery as well, somewhere around here. You see it? That's the wrinkle zone right there. Then they have to, because it snaps up like that. It's always pulling you together. And this is where there's abrupt transitions where the tendon meets the muscle. And there's different layers of types of tendon, first of all. And then there's different areas where they attach in different ways. And we could see all of those at Giant's Causeway. And that's why I was wanting to use that video, and I did let them know that I did use some of their video in my presentation. But that Devil's Tower is this right here. That's all that is. That's in the ground. These are the fibers coming up, and it snaps in an abrupt transition. It's probably going to be right there. And the reason you're seeing it sticking up like that is, as far as I'm concerned, they must have died in the Great Flood standing up, trying to preserve themselves, boiling probably in the hot waters, because it was a hot water flood, terrible bad flood, from almost being impacted by Venus. The skies were on fire, everything it was just a nightmare, and they were all killed during that event. These are giant creatures. There's no other way to put it. This here I showed the other day, this is a young guy that goes out studying everywhere. This is all layers of tissue, and these are the top layer. This is tendon. This is a ponerosis tendon. It's like a Brazilian, I think he's measured like 60 feet down or something, and that's tendon blocks, which are that one there, which I just showed you here, is much bigger than Giant's Causeway. Giant's Causeway is nothing compared to this site, and this is in America, so we got the biggest giants in the world. Now, this is tendon. That's why it's sticking up here. The bone was back here, and that locked into the bone, and the muscle started here, and it just eroded away. Remember I showed you can't hardly see this one? In the back is all the rid of gluey stuff would have been. And that's the only reason it's here, because it's a tough spot. So that's not the rope style. The rope style is just a round circular rope like that. The other ones, like I say, inside your body there's a bazillion different ways they attach and so forth. But they are all made out of that collagen and those fibrils. And they show different areas and how they weave together and so forth. But they all are made out of this stuff right here. Basically, that's it. Okay, my next video is going to be just an accumulation of different pictures. Now, it's fair game, as far as I'm concerned, on the internet. If they have them on the internet, I'm going to be able to show them under the Fair Use Act and explain what it is for research purposes. All right, teaching, research, examination, commenting, questions, and then I will respond to whoever responds to me. But I'm going to tell you right now, that's some form of a tissue layer. And I would say it's somewhere in the digestive system. And this is where there was a bloody attachment here of arterial blood supply. And these shots I'm going to be showing are going to be just spectacular. And again, as far as I'm concerned, if they're on the internet and somebody put them up there, I should have no, legal obligation to contact them or any of that, because you can use it without permission as long as it's for research purposes and education, teaching, so forth. That's exactly what I'm out here to do, because what we have been taught is just not correct. And if we can't speak about it, we can't speak about it. And that's what's happened. And that's just not acceptable anymore. It's just starting to be seen. I see everybody around is talking, well, not everybody, there's a lot of people are talking about it, but a lot of them don't understand what they're talking about either, in my opinion. If I'm wrong, this is what science is. It's examination. This is, oh, no, this happened because of this, and that. Well, maybe. Let's look deeper and deeper and deeper on things, and we'll find out. And that's what I do. I go as deep as I can go on it. And it's my opinion right now is I can't find anything, literally anything, that didn't come from some form of biology. Mud is nothing more than dissolved flesh. This was a hot saltwater flood. These kind of things here where you have fascia and the collagen fibrils, that's a different story. They turned into really stony, hard surfaces. But the muddy, bloody stuff inside is just nothing more than mud. And then bones eroded, and it depended upon where the chemistry was in the area where this preservation took place. If it was in an area near a kidney, you're going to have urine, and that's caustic, and it's going to do whatever it does to the materials around it. Or if it was in a heart, you're going to have a ton of blood. That's a lot of transition metals. You have a lot of colors and so forth. And wherever there's fabrics, they're going to turn like this. And you're going to actually see the actual fabric. Very, very easy to see this stuff. So keep tuned in, because they're not alerting people to my videos, I'm hearing. And as a matter of fact, I had somebody tell me today, boy, they couldn't hardly find my channel. And I know that for a fact, because I've tried too. And it's just not, you put it in, and a whole bunch of other things come up, but not mine. So stick around, make sure you stay tuned into it, and make sure they didn't unsubscribe you, because that's happening a lot, I've heard as well. So stay with me. Giant's Causeway, like I say, the whole area was just a giant. All right, I love you all. We'll talk.